Hello, good morning, friends. Today, we would be doing some miscellaneous updates on biodiversity. These are basically the news which happened in May, June, July. So, mostly in June and July, related to biodiversity, which we have missed. And there are a few topics, one or two topics, which are of last year, which we had missed while covering those topics. Okay, now, today I'll have to take all the doubts through chat. Second, tomorrow we'll be starting with air pollution. So tomorrow at 9:30, the class would be on air pollution. Let's this be our last class on biodiversity. Okay, so the first topic that we want to study is related to Kharai camel. Kharai camel is a breed of camel. I'm not saying a separate species of camel. It's a breed of camel which is found in the Kutch region of Gujarat. It's only found in Kutch. Now, the term Kharai comes from the word Khara. Khara means saline water. It's because this camel can swim in the ocean. So it can survive in the saline water. It doesn't drink that water. No one drinks that saline water. It can swim in that water, and thus it's considered to be something which can. That's why it is called Kharai camel. Now, second thing is, it is also called Darya Taru. Darya is another term for sea. So Darya Taru means sea swimmer. So Kharai camel or Darya Taru refers to this breed of animal itself. Now, because it is able to swim. Now, see, I was brought up in Rajasthan, so for me, camels were very common. I could see them around, and you would see that camels have a typical kind of legs, and it's difficult to swim with those legs, because to swim you'll have to push water behind. But this particular breed has what is known as webbed feet. They say when you look at a frog, frogs have webbed feet. No, in the same way, this particular camel has webbed feet. Now, generally, they would swim along the Gulf of Kutch to reach islands, forested islands, where we have mangrove vegetation, and they eat mangrove vegetation. They eat other saline water, other plant species which can survive on saline water. Now, in recent years, what has happened is their population has declined. Around 10 years back, their population was around 10,000, which has reduced to around 5,000 now. Why has this happened? One reason for it has been the habitat loss, that is, we are destroying the areas in which they survived. But another important factor has been coming up of a large number of saltwater pans in the region. So in Gujarat, the extraction of salt has increased, and because of that, the path that they used to travel to go to the coast and thus move to the island, swim to the island to consume food, that path has been blocked. So the herders of these camels have been requesting government, have been opposing those saltwater pans, and for that reason, throughout the year, this remains in news. This Kharai camel was differentiated from other types of camels in India. It was declared a separate breed only in 2015, and since 2015, the focus on this Kharai camel has increased. In fact, in 2016, in preliminary examination, a question on Kharai camel was also asked, because in 2015 it was declared as a separate breed. So these are some basic things about this camel that you should know. Very recently, Amul have also started camel milk product to support camel herders. Usme Kharai camel herders are also being supported. Okay, so this was one thing, that Kharai camel was one thing that we had missed. Then there's another news in July about an albino palm civet being seen in Odisha after 129 years. So before we jump onto albino palm civet, let us understand what a civet is. You must be remembering Malabar civet. We had said that it's a cat-like animal. Look at this. This is another species of civet called palm civet. This palm civet is of the family Viverridae and is found in southern and southeastern Asia. So South Asia में है, तो India में भी मिल रहा है. Now, There are some basic things about it, that it's nocturnal, it is both arboreal and terrestrial. ये सारी चीजें एक बार read करना है. But what we want to talk about is the albino common palm civet. Now, albinism, you must be knowing, is a disorder in which melanin is not produced in your body. So, albinism is a disease or a disorder which is found in humans also. You must, if you go and search for albinism, you will find that people of African origin would appear completely white because there is no melanin being produced in their body. That is albinism, and that is visible in other mammals also. So here a civet was found after more than 100 years with this property, with this albinism in Odisha. So for that purpose it was in news. So researchers have stumbled across the partial albino common palm civet in Satkosia Tiger Reserve in state's Angul district, and it was last sighted in 1891 by a noted wildlife researcher in Kandhamal district. So this has happened after 129 years, and that's why it was in news. Now there's one more interesting thing about this particular civet. जो ये हमारा palm civet है, there's an interesting thing about it. A type of coffee is produced with the help of this civet. This civet eats the coffee bean. That coffee bean goes through the intestine, goes through the digestion process, gets fermented, then it comes out in the shit. That shit is washed, the coffee beans are extracted, and it's a special type of coffee which is in demand and which is pretty expensive also for this fermentation process. And this coffee is called civet coffee or Kopi Luwak. Kopi Luwak is a coffee that consists of partially digested coffee cherries which have been eaten and defecated by the Asian palm civet. Fine. If you there was a recent movie. I think, what was the name of the movie? That Siddharth Chopra, Alia Bhatt was there, who was supposed to get married. Badrinath Ki Dulhaniya or something like this. There was this movie. In this movie, an example of this coffee was shown. Like एक तो there is this movie, बद्रीनाथ की दुल्हनिया. उससे पहले एक मूवी है ना, और इन्हीं सेम एक्टर्स की. No, you people don't watch Bollywood movies. Good. So in that movie also, a male protagonist tries to tell the other side कि आपको जो कॉफी पिलाई जा रही है वो इस प्रोसेस से बनी है. So this is a special type of coffee, Kopi Luwak, which has been referred in Indian Bollywood movies also. किसी ने नहीं देखी है, मतलब मैं ही यहाँ पे वो हूँ वेला आदमी, बाकी कोई नहीं देखता. ओके. हम्टी शर्मा की दुल्हन, नहीं, something like this. I'm sorry, I'm not able to recall the name. तो चलो, male civet, this civet civet was found recently in Odisha. Now come to male Kokalas. This is a bird. This is a type of bird. For the first time, a male Kokalas pheasant has been photographed in India. So it is found in India. It has been seen in India in the past, but it was never photographed. It has been photographed for the first time in India in June 2021 in Arunachal Pradesh, in the Walong town of Arunachal Pradesh. Walong is India's easternmost town. You know that Arunachal Pradesh is the easternmost state of India. उस स्टेट में भी जो easternmost town है, that is Walong. Now this bird, the male Kokalas pheasant, females have been seen, male one was not seen. This bird is found in Tibet and China, has been seen in Tibet and China. It is believed that because this place is very near to China border, it may have come from the other side, and that's why it was seen. So this male Kokalas pheasant called Mary was photographed for the first time in India in June 2021. You will see that this male subspecies had never been recorded outside China and Tibet. In fact, there are 9 subspecies of this particular bird. 4 of them are found in Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh, but this particular subspecies Mary was not found. This male counterpart was not found in India so far, has been found for the first time. That is one thing that you have to know. And second is about Wallong town, the easternmost town in India. From geography's perspective, this question may be asked. Now, India's first lichen park. You remember, if you remember the class on animal kingdom, plant kingdom, there we had briefly talked about what lichens are. Lichens are an organism which are formed out of mutual relationship, or they can also be called composite organisms formed out of cyanobacteria and fungi, mutual relationship between cyanobacteria and fungi species. That is lichens. Now, lichens are a significant bioindicator, are very important bioindicators, because they need pure environment to grow. If the environment is polluted, they would not be able to survive. If the air is polluted, if the water is polluted, they will not be able to survive. So they are very important from this perspective. They are very important bioindicators. Other than that, there are a lot of uses of lichens. We'll talk about that. Globally, there are around 20,000 species, of which 2,000 plus, 2,700 plus are found in India only, and they're found almost everywhere. From Himalayas to the coastal region, you'll be able to find these lichens everywhere. Uttarakhand itself have 600 species, followed by Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. So in India, the highest number of lichens are found in Uttarakhand. इसीलिए इंडिया का जो पहला लाइकन पार्क बनेगा वो भी उत्तराखंड में बनेगा. Okay, now where are lichens used? It is used in the preparation of Hyderabadi biryani. It is used for making perfumes in Kannauj. It is used for making dyes and some other medicines also. So it has some other applications also. But because of pollution, because of overpopulation, because of climate change and all other factors, lichens are also facing extinction or other problems. And therefore, to protect it, for the first time, government of Uttarakhand has come up with a lichen park in Munshiari area of Kumaon district. Munshiari area of Kumaon district mein the first lichen park we have come up with. Now, under this, in this lichen park, lichen would be protected. And second thing is, we would be making locals aware about what is the significance of lichens, so that they can also contribute in the protection of this particular lichens. In Uttarakhand, lichens are also known as jhola or patthar ke phool. So this is another thing that we must know about. So like India's first lichen park, Uttarakhand, Munshiari region of Munshiari place of Kumaon region. That is something that you should know. What are lichens? They are important bioindicators. These things are there. Rahul is saying, sir, questions on biodiversity will be covered as you said. Questions would be covered. I said ki on environment, biodiversity and climate change, we'll be doing 500 questions. Why are you asking this here? We'll be doing 500 questions on environment, biodiversity and climate change together. Okay, now bee fences to ward off elephant attack. Rehab project of KVIC. Okay, now what is this bee fence? Let's understand this. Let's say this is a forest. There's a village here. There's a village here. There's a village here. Now in this village, let's say this is the path which elephant takes. And because of this, from this forest, a lot of elephants enter the village, destroy the habitation or destroy the cultivated area and so on. Right. Now, we don't want कि हम यहाँ पे environment को बहुत destabilize करें. We dig pits or we build some barriers, because वो naturally it would not be feasible. So under this bee fences initiative, what is being done is bee boxes are being set up in the path. Bee boxes, the boxes in which bee would grow. Okay, and these are also connected by strings. Now suppose if elephants move into this area, these bee boxes would shake. If elephants touch this string, bee boxes would shake and bees would come up. Elephants have a tendency to stay away from bees, and thus elephants would not be entering these villages. So this is a step towards reducing human elephant conflict. The bee fences using bee boxes are being established in Karnataka. It was in news earlier last year. It was in news last year. I had missed it. So this is part of a initiative by Khadi and Village Industrial Commission's Project Rehab, reducing elephant human attack use. Okay, rehab project Rehab, reducing elephant human attacks use. That's it. इतना याद रखना है. So this is an initiative which has been started for now in the Kodagu district of Karnataka, in a few villages in the Kodagu district of Karnataka. So I hope this term bee fences to ward off elephant attacks, you have understood it. Important part is you have to know that it is an initiative by KVIC, not of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay, it's an initiative there. The initiative's name is Rehab. The short form of the initiative is Rehab, reducing elephant human attacks using. Fine. I hope this is understood now. In May, we studied that there is only one place in India where natural breeding of ghadial takes place. If you remember that, that was the Chambal region in Madhya Pradesh. We also saw that there are 3 different crocodilian species which are found in India. One is ghadial, which is critically endangered. Other was magar, which is vulnerable. Magar is also found throughout India, like from Rajasthan to Tamil Nadu, you'll find magar. Odisha mein magar milta hai. And then saltwater crocodile. Saltwater crocodile on the eastern coast of India, Sundarbans mein milega, Odisha mein milega, because it's saltwater, so saltwater mein mil raha hoga. Okay. These are the 3 crocodilian species. Saltwater are least concern. So the ghadials are critically endangered. Ghadials naturally bred at only one place. Okay. In Odisha, in May 2021, we saw hatching of ghadials for the first. Look at this ghadial with 28 new kids of ghadial. छोटा है? हाँ, ये छोटे छोटे. See this. The ghadial and the small hatchlings of ghadial. So now, if a question is asked, the only place in India where natural breeding of ghadials take place, Chambal would be wrong. Now, in Mahanadi river of Odisha also, remember, ghadials are freshwater. So they will not be on the Odisha coast. They will be in freshwater. So in the Mahanadi river of Odisha, this breeding has taken place. So this happened in May, but was in news in June. So there is this small update, and this is a huge achievement because efforts towards this in Odisha were started 45 years back. It was in 1975 for the first time in Odisha, a Ghadial Research Conservation Unit was established where a few Ghadials were introduced. All those Ghadials eventually died without giving any birth or anything like that. Later what happened? In last 3 years, 13 more Ghadials were introduced. Of these 13 Ghadials also, a few have died. Around 8 have survived. Of that, 6 are untraceable. Kahan hai wo? But scientists, researchers, the forest officers, they kept on tracking 2 Ghadials. And recently, in Mahanadi river, 28 hatchlings were spotted. You have also seen the image. You have also understood this. Okay, so when Ghadials in 1975 were introduced in Odisha, an interesting thing happened. Odisha became the only state in India where all three species of crocodiles, which three species? Ghadial, Magar and saltwater crocodile were found. So they were not breeding, they didn't give birth, but since 1975, all three species of ghadials have been found in Odisha. When all of them died, we introduced, in last 3 years, 13 more ghadials were introduced, but this time we've had new hatchlings. So now we have many more of them. Ghadials are interesting. See, ghadials are specialized for catching fish. They do not harm human. अब आप जाके उसको मारोगे तो it will harm you, but it will not attack you for food. But people, because they do not understand the difference between ghadial and magar, or ghadial and saltwater crocodile, who intentionally can attack humans, they tend to kill it, they tend to harm it. So an awareness is also needed कि ghadials are not harmful for us unless you harm them. Fine. So this was घड़ियाल coming up in Odisha. थोड़ा basic details इनके बारे में भी रखना कि महानदी river में है, and all those things you should know about. Now, Operation Olivia. Operation Olivia क्या है? So you remember this turtles, olive ridley turtles. You know that olive ridley turtles come to the coast of Odisha for laying eggs and all. You know about that. This happens in a particular period in which even Odisha governments prevents tourism or prevents human interference in those areas. So Operation Olivia is an initiative by Indian Coast Guard where they increase their, what do they increase? They increase their surveillance in that area to ensure that the olive ridley turtles are not affected. So Operation Olivia is associated with which of the following करके question आ सकता है. Operation Olivia is an initiative implemented by whom? So it is Indian Coast Guard. These are certain things that for preliminary examination you should be aware of. Okay, now Indian python. So see, it was in news recently because in Odisha, artificial hatching of a few Indian python eggs had taken place in July. 27 eggs from rescued python have been artificially hatched in Odisha. So recently what had happened was, so by the way, this Indian python is also known as black-tailed python, Indian rock python, Asian rock python. So we had talked about one of the pythons when we were discussing snakes. The python which from Myanmar had been introduced as an exotic species, as an invasive species in USA, and it has become a huge issue. Okay, but these pythons are threatened. The Indian pythons are threatened even in India. They're facing a lot of problems because of habitat loss and all. So recently, one of the pregnant pythons was found in a lot of pain among some stones. Like after she got a bit well, she slithered into the forest, leaving the eggs behind. So these eggs have been artificially hatched. Recently, you can see the image where eggs are being hatched. Eggs may say the pythons are coming out in Odisha recently and was in news. This was in news recently, so you must know a few things about these pythons also. Now come to Pyrostria lalji. Now we are coming to plant species. We are done with animal species which have been in news in June, July. Now we are coming to plant species, Pyrostria lalji. Altogether new species of tree found in Andaman and Nicobar Islands recently. In 2016 preliminary examination, a question was asked about a new banana species. Where has it been found? The answer was Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It was found in 2015-16 wale period mein, it was asked in the examination. In the same way, a new tree species, Pyrostria lalji, has been found in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now, of this genus, Pyrostria genus, this is the first tree that has been found in India. Outside India, this genus have been found. In Madagascar, a lot of trees of this genus are there. But अब genus से भी ऊपर जाओगे क्या होगा? Family. Of this family, it belongs to family Rubiaceae, and you would know this is also the family of coffee. So of this family, a number of plant species are found in India, but this particular genus Pyrostria was never found in India. It has been usually found in Madagascar. So this is the first time that this genus have been found in India. Further, this species, ये species तो altogether नया है. This species has been found for the first time, Lalji, Pyrostria lalji. This species is a new species to the science. It has been named after one of the officers of Botanical Survey of India. So his name was Lalji Singh, and it has been named after him. So Pyrostria lalji, a new tree species found in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So currently it was found in Andaman's Vandoor forest, but scientists expect that in the nearby forests such as Tirur forest, Jarava reserve forest, etc. also it would be found. Currently, based on the IUCN criteria, it has been listed as critically endangered. Fine. So I hope this is understood. This issue, Pyrostria lalji, a new tree species. Pyrostria, a genus which is not new. Genus of this genus, a number of species have been found in other countries, not in India. So in India, this genus is new. This species is altogether new. This species was not known to science so far. Now come to Malana cream. Actually, now we are talking about drugs. So last year, after Sushant Singh Rajput's death, a lot of drug-related issues in Bollywood was raised. If you remember that. Now, in December, one of the known person of this guy, Sushant Singh Rajput, was found with Malana cream, which is a special type of drug. So we want to understand this. What is this Malana cream? In fact, in Indian Express, there was a whole page explaining Malana cream or explaining these drugs. Now, you must be knowing cannabis. What are cannabis? Hindi में क्या बोलते हैं? Ganja and all those things are cannabis. There are different species and all. Now, charas or hash or hashish or ganja, which you obtain from Malana Valley in Kullu district of Himachal Pradesh. So Malana Valley mein you get a special type of charas or afim. That is called Malana cream. Why? Because it has some special characteristics. We'll talk about that. But first, let us understand cannabis in general. When we look at a cannabis plant, what is there? Like, what is there in the weed? Ki aap marte ho and you get into a high state. So these cannabis have compounds called cannabinoids. So there are two important cannabinoids that we must know about. One is THC or tetrahydrocannabinoid. This THC or tetrahydrocannabinoid is a psychotic or primary psychotic or psychoactive constituent. It is this THC which makes you go to a different state. We'll understand how that happens. We'll also understand that. But THC is one of the cannabinoids, one of the psychoactive compounds here. Fine? ये बात समझ में आई? Second, so one is THC. Other cannabinoid that is found in cannabis is cannabidiol. Cannabidiol is non-psychoactive. Like THC is psychoactive. इसे psychotic को psychoactive कर लीजिए, psychoactive. THC is psychoactive, but this cannabinoid, cannabidiol, this is a type of cannabinoid. So this cannabinoid is non-psychoactive, but it can be used for medicinal purposes. So we have talked about two cannabinoids. One is THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and other is cannabidiol. These are two cannabinoids. Usme THC is psychoactive. Cannabidiol is not psychoactive, but it is one of the main compounds behind the health benefit linked to things like bhang. Bhang bhi उनसे ही बनता है गांजा, भांग, ऑल ऑफ इट कम्स फ्रॉम द सेम प्लांट. नाउ both these tetrahydrocannabinol and cannabidiol, they are similar to a compound found in our body called endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids are found in our body. These endocannabinoids bind to our body's cannabinoid receptors and are involved in activities like learning, memory, decision making, immunity, and motor function. And therefore, when these cannabinoids from outside come to our body, they can easily bind to the cannabinoid receptors and give us the feeling that we get while using cannabis, while using drugs and all. Now, ये जो कैनबी प्लांट है इसका यूज क्या क्या हो सकता है? तो सी, plants which have low THC, which is the psychoactive substance, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol is the psychoactive substance. Plant which has low THC, they generally have industrial non-drug uses like making ropes, paper, textile, etc. उसमें THC है ही नहीं तो मार के भी क्या करोगे? Then plants which have high level of CBD. Now CBD is also not psychoactive. CBD is also not psychoactive. So plants which have high level of CBD are used for medicinal purposes. But plants which have high level of THC are used for drugs purposes. High होने के लिए use होता है. And Malana cream is a special type of THC, a special type of, it comes from a special type of cannabis plant which has much higher level of THC. And therefore, Malana cream is one of the highest sought drugs in India and all across the world. Okay, in fact, you would see that 10 gram of Malana cream in India is sold between 1500 to 8000 rupees. This is the cost. This cost will rise exponentially if you go abroad. They're illegal. See, first of all, its cultivation in India is not allowed. Its sale in India is not allowed. But still it is sold. Its export is also not allowed if its sale and cultivation is not allowed. But in the bars and other such places of Amsterdam and all, you can find this at a very high price. So Malana cream is a product, is a resin, is charas that we extract from the cannabis plant found in the Malana village area of Himachal Pradesh. Okay, now if this is illegal, इसका cultivation इंडिया में सप्लाई कैसे हो रहा है? First of all, this Malana village is in a very remote area. In fact, till around 15 years back, in order to reach here, the nearest road was 15-20 kilometers away. So in order to reach to this village, you had to trek for 15-20 kilometers. Now the nearest road is 4 kilometers away, but even now you have to trek, and it's in remote area. So because it is in remote area, police or the forces reaching here is a bit difficult. Second, as law enforcement is improving, the cultivators are shifting their cultivation to more and more remote areas. चले जाओ Himalayan terrain में, people who are locals there, they can always reach more remote areas when compared to you. Then third reason why it continues is in Himachal Pradesh, it is part of the culture, consuming somewhat a part of it because इसके health benefits भी रहे traditionally. It has been consumed, and because of this, it's a contentious issue, and therefore this has kept on going. In fact, people go to Malana village for its trekking beauty. वहाँ पे ट्रैक करते हुए जाते हैं, फिर 2-4 दिन रह के आराम से Malana cream enjoy करते हैं. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, but they enjoy sometimes there. मेरे को 2-3 लोगों ने जो वीडियो ऑन कर रखा है खुश भी हैं, हाँ हमें भी करना है ऐसा. चलिए, तो by the way, Malana cream, one of the cannabis species. Now, Madurai Mali. It was in news yesterday. If you remember yesterday, the newspaper articles that I had sent you उसमें one of the news articles was from PIB in the prelims only fact, which was talking about export of Madurai Malli. So what is Madurai Malli? It is the jasmine, famous jasmine flower from Tamil Nadu. Madurai Malli, home is Madurai. Madurai is the jasmine capital of the world. And as Indians are, so if there would hardly be a woman in Tamil Nadu who has not used Madurai Malli. It's so famous. कोई भी important occasion होगा, they would use it. बालों को सजाने के लिए and all. Recently, yesterday it was in news, like in PIB में day before yesterday it was there, in news yesterday it was there, consignments of GI certified Madurai Malli. The first thing, Madurai Malli is GI certified, right? And other traditional flowers such as button rose, lily, samanthi, marigold were exported from Tamil Nadu to the US and Dubai. So Indians all over the world, no matter where they shift, they want their traditional things with them. So these flowers were exported, and for that purpose it was in news. Madurai Malli, it's a GI tagged thing, and all those kind of stuff for preliminary examination may be needed. Now rosewood. Rosewood, if you look at this, I didn't add this image in your notes, but if you look at these wooden items, these are different kinds of rosewood that we have. So what is rosewood? These are richly hued timber which are often brownish with darker veins. You can see these veins which are a bit darker, which gives it that beautiful shape. So rosewood is a species of plant which is used for is a group of plant species which are used for producing these beautiful quality timber. The most famous one, sorry, by the way, all the rosewood species come in the genus Dalbergia. इसी genus में there are peas and all those things, so we are not getting into that. But rosewood trees are of different species and they are in the genus Dalbergia. The most famous rosewood is the Brazilian rosewood, also known as Bahia rosewood. Other than its use as a timber, it also emanates a strong sweet smell for many days, and that's why the name rosewood. Otherwise you would be wondering, sir, why does a timber which is being used for various purposes is being called rosewood? Because it is the most famous Brazilian rosewood which also emanates this beautiful smell. Now in India, the rosewood that is mostly used is Dalbergia latifolia, which is also known as East Indian rosewood, which is native to India. In fact, this rosewood here is Dalbergia latifolia. It's native to India, but now it's being grown in other parts also. For example, Pakistan mein, in some plantations it is grown. Another rosewood species, Dalbergia sishu. For those of you who are from North India would know Shisham. That is Dalbergia. You know, Shisham has very high quality of timber. It's used for excellent purposes. So if you have used guitars are generally made out of, the good quality guitars are generally made out of rosewood. I'm talking about the acoustic ones, not the electric ones. Acoustic guitars are generally made out of rosewood. So Shisham is also extremely dense and has mild rot resistance. It is used for making cabinets, for flooring and for carving purposes. So this rosewood is in huge demand, and during COVID-19 when the law enforcement activities were diverted to other areas, a lot of illegal felling of rosewoods had taken place. It was in news in June 2021. But usse zyada zaruri hai for us to understand what rosewoods are, different types of rosewoods. Shisham is a type of rosewood. Those things, this will give us a broader perspective कि exam में अगर rosewood related कुछ आएगा, will not be completely blank. That is my idea here. Now, let's go to some, so these were species which we had missed or when we had covered species in May and June, this was not even in news. Okay, so I keep telling you that our program will run till September 10. The reason for that is September 10 तक का current affairs हमें cover करना है. Because your exam is on October 10, we will try to cover current affairs till September 10 for your preliminary examination. So these updates would keep coming. जैसे अभी हमने जून जुलाई के updates लिए हैं. Now, in national efforts, there were some other things which were in news. One is National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being. We have talked about biodiversity. In biodiversity, we talked about various acts, various policies, programs. There's a mission, National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being. What is this mission? See, this is a mission which was approved by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council, PMSTIAC. These two bodies, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and PMSTIAC, along with some other ministries, approved National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being way back in 2018. This mission was approved in 2018. Now, what's happening in this mission right now? Under this mission, a Bangalore-based organization, Biodiversity Collaborative, it is working with the National Biodiversity Authority to hold consultation and prepare a roadmap on how this mission would be implemented throughout the country. That is what's happening. तो अभी implementation चालू नहीं हुआ है. Focus क्या है? The mission will strengthen the science, which will help you in biodiversity conservation, restoration, protection. So basically, one thing that this mission would be doing is focus on improving or strengthening the science of restoring, conserving and sustainably utilizing India's natural heritage. Then this mission will also focus on ensuring that biodiversity becomes a key consideration in all our developmental programs. So पहले strengthen science behind biodiversity, protection of biodiversity and all. Then in all the development programs in agriculture, in ecosystem services, everywhere, biodiversity को एक higher consideration देना है. Then establish a citizen and policy oriented biodiversity information system, enhance capacity across all sectors for the realization of India's national biodiversity targets and UN SDGs. These are certain things that this would be doing. Now, there are some other advantages of the mission. It will increase our natural assets. If biodiversity improves, natural assets in the country would increase. It will help us towards fighting climate change. It will increase agri-production. It will restoration activities across India will lead to restoration of degraded lands, etc. And then it will also meet our international commitments towards conservation on Convention on Biological Diversity, commitments in the UNFCCC, Paris Agreement, commitments in SDGs. तो biodiversity protect करने के लिए हमको initiative launch करते हैं. तो by protecting biodiversity, we will also be working towards fulfilling these international commitments. So this is the National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being. In fact, एक हिंदू में ना बहुत बड़ा article आया था on what is the significance of biodiversity, national mission about this particular topic, and then what further needs to be done. We'll cover all those things for the mains examination. Of that bada sa article, I've only taken that part which is relevant for preliminary examination, and I've included it here. What is this mission? Who has started this mission? What is happening under this mission? What are the key components of this mission? And what would be the advantages? Advantages you could have also guessed by common sense. Now, eco-sensitive zones around protected areas. Let's talk about this. See, consider this situation. There's a national park. There's a national park. Let's say this is a national park. This is the last point of national park. And right outside this national park, we start mining activities. Or we start a chemical factory. Or we start cutting trees. Will it hamper the national park negatively? Yes, it would. So what eco-sensitive zones are? These are basically buffer zones around protected areas. So eco-sensitive zones are basically buffer zones around protected areas where highly polluting activities which may hamper the national park or wildlife sanctuaries would not be allowed. So this would protect the buffer hai, so it would protect national parks from outside activities. It also acts as transition zone. See, a lot of animals from national park would venture out. Before they get into highly populated areas and all, there is a need of buffer zone also. There's a need of transition zone also. Eco-sensitive areas, eco-sensitive zones are these zones, these areas. I hope you've all understood. Let me know if there is any doubt in the understanding of the purpose of eco-sensitive zone. सबको समझ में आ रहा है? I'm hoping this. Okay, now in 2006, a landmark judgment from Supreme Court came. In this judgment, the Supreme Court directed all the states throughout the country to establish eco-sensitive zones around protected areas, around all their protected areas. The Supreme Court said that you establish ESZ, eco-sensitive zone, and if there is no eco-sensitive zone, then ESZ of 10 kilometers shall apply around protected areas. So if this is my protected area, and if government is not saying ki how much would be the eco-sensitive zone, so a distance of up to 10 kilometers will be considered eco-sensitive zone. Now see, we have a bird sanctuary in Delhi. If government of Delhi had not said ki this is the eco-sensitive zone around that bird sanctuary, then 10 kilometers from that bird sanctuary would have covered almost the whole of Delhi, would have been covered in the definition of eco-sensitive zone. The government of Delhi ने a few meters, a few hundred meters बताया है कि this will be the eco-sensitive zones. Now, in 2011, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change came up with guidelines on what is prohibited, what is regulated, and what is permitted inside eco-sensitive zone. So what is prohibited? Highly polluting, dangerous things would be prohibited. Commercial mining, sawmills, polluting industries, commercial use of firewood, major hydropower projects, etc. Tourism activities like flying over protected areas in an aircraft or hot air balloon and discharge of effluent and solid waste, etc. are completely prohibited. What is allowed? What is regulated? Not allowed, regulated. Felling of trees. National Park Wildlife Sanctuary, it would not be allowed. In eco-sensitive zones, felling of trees may be allowed, but it is regulated. The felling of trees, drastic change in agriculture system, commercial use of natural water resources, including groundwater harvesting, and so on. These are certain activities which, if regulated properly, will not lead to damage. Mining is definitely going to cause damage. So mining is not allowed. Sawmills are definitely going to cause damage. They are not allowed. But certain activities which, if done properly, can be okay, are regulated, and certain activities which have been going on and are not dangerous are allowed. For example, ongoing agriculture and horticulture activities. Activities which are ongoing agriculture, horticulture activities which have been already happening in that area, that is allowed. But if you make drastic changes in agriculture system, that is regulated. Even drastic changes may be okay, but that gets regulated here. So ongoing agriculture and horticulture practices by local communities, rainwater harvesting, organic farming, adoption of green technologies, use of renewable energy resources, these things are allowed. So width क्या रहता है? Width vary from protected area to protected area, but if it is not declared, a general principle of using 10 kilometers around, it is used. Okay, so this was eco-sensitive zones in general. Now come to eco-sensitive zones or eco-sensitive areas in Western Ghats. Now you know that Western Ghats, in India, Western Ghats are one of the hot spots. Western Ghats have so many national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserve bhi hai, Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. So Western Ghats also have to be protected. In 2010, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change set up Western Ghat Ecology Expert Panel, WGEEP. This is also known as Madhav Gadgil Committee, to give recommendation on how much of eco-sensitive zones, eco-sensitive areas should be there in Western Ghats. According to Madhav Gadgil, whole of entire Western Ghat of 1.29 lakh square kilometers should be included in ecologically sensitive areas. All of it is important according to Madhav Gadgil Committee, which gave its recommendation. It had identified 3 types of ecological sensitivity: ESZ1, ESZ2, ESZ3. ESZ1 highly protected, ESZ2 thoda less protected, ESZ3 thoda less protected. The idea was, because if we declare the whole of Western Ghats as nothing is allowed, even agriculture is not allowed, go to hell. A lot of people live in Western Ghats. A lot of towns, cities, villages are there. So this ESZ1, Z2, Z3 criteria was there. For example, in ESZ1, no new dam based on large storage will be permitted. In ESZ1 and ESZ2, there was indefinite moratorium on non-environmental clearance for mining in ESZ1. In ESZ1, all the mines had to be phased out by 2016 when this recommendation came. So what you see is, they're saying ki the Madhav Gadgil Committee said that the whole of Western Ghat should be declared eco-sensitive zone, and then based on whether it is in ESZ 1, 2, 3, restrictions should be imposed. For example, another restriction was no new polluting industries, which would include coal-based power plants, should be permitted to be established in ESZ 1 and ESZ 2. ESZ 3 में it could be established. Because again, energy भी तो provide करना पड़ेगा ना उस area को. When we are declaring the whole of Western Ghats, मतलब almost whole of Kerala भी आ जाएगा. And we cannot say that you cannot establish a power plant there. But in the more sensitive areas, it was not allowed. Okay, so it also called for creation of a national level Western Ghat Ecological Authority for the protection of the region. Why a national level authority? Because Western Ghats cover 6 states in India: Kerala, Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. These are the 6 states which are covered by Western Ghats. So a national level body was also recommended by Madhav Gadgil Committee, but this could not be implemented because of a lot of resistance. If you declare the whole of Western Ghats as eco-sensitive zones, developmental activities would suffer, people may suffer, a number of regulations would come into play, and thus states were unhappy with it. It was never implemented. Later, when Delhi High Court directed the government to take action on the Madhav Gadgil Committee report, the government formed another committee, another high-level working group under the chairmanship of Dr. Kasturi Ranjan. So Madhav Gadgil Committee and Dr. Kasturi Ranjan Committee are generally some things that you should know about. Now, this guy, Dr. Kasturi Ranjan Committee, this high-level working group made some changes. First, Madhav Gadgil Committee had said that 1.29 lakh square kilometer is the area of Western Ghats. They expanded the area of Western Ghats. They said that Western Ghats are 1.64280 square kilometers. So 1,64,280 square kilometers. This is the size of Western Ghats. This is what? Who said? The Kasturi Ranjan Committee said. But they said of this, only 41% constitute natural landscape. In other landscapes, human beings are living and the landscape is no more natural. So of this 41% landscape, 90%. So 41% का 90% roughly 37% होता है. That is 37% of the Western Ghats should be declared eco-sensitive zone. I'll again explain you the whole thing. What is saying is 1.64 lakh square kilometer is the area of Western Ghats. Now, the whole of Western Ghats doesn't have to be declared eco-sensitive zone, as was said by Madhav Gadgil. He said, this committee said that only 40% of it is the natural zone. And of this 40%, around 90%, that is of the total 37%. इस 40% का 90% इस 40 का 90% कितना होता है 36, 41% का 90%, अच्छा ये दिस इज 41%, नॉट 40%, 41% का 90% is roughly 37, so 37% of the whole Western Ghats should be declared eco-sensitive zone. So of the total area of 1.64, अगर आप 40% जाओगे तो रफली 60,000 स्क्वायर, 37% जाओगे तो रफली 60,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर ऑफ वेस्टर्न घाट्स should be declared eco-sensitive zones. Then prohibitory and regulatory regime in ESA was provided for example, complete ban on mining, quarrying and sand mining. No new thermal power projects should be allowed in ESA. Hydropower projects may be allowed but subject to conditions. All red category industries should be strictly banned. These were certain things which were provided to happen in eco-sensitive areas. Okay, but both these, na to Madhav Gadgil, na Kasturi Ranjan, nothing has been implemented, mostly because of opposition from the states, also from the locals, from the farmers. Opposition is from the states. Why would there be opposition from the states? Opposition would be from the states because they are worried कि इतने एरिया को हम इको सेंसिटिव जोन डिक्लेयर कर देंगे तो developmental activities, energy needs and all those things would suffer. Recently it was in news because in a meeting with Environment Ministry, these states had come up कि we need to finalize, we need to quicken this definition. We need to quicken this or we need to fast track this declaration of eco-sensitive zone for the protection of Western Ghats. In fact, experts say that जो Kerala floods 2018-2019 में devastating हुए थे, one of the reasons for it is we have been allowing a lot of human interference in the Western Ghats. If Western Ghats में these eco-sensitive zones were declared and human interference would have been reduced, then the disaster would not have been, the floods would not have become a huge disaster. But what is important is for you to understand Madhav Gadgil committee, Kasturi Ranjan committee, roughly their recommendation, Madhav Gadgil is saying that almost whole of Western Ghats 1.3 lakh square kilometers should be declared a eco-sensitive zone. Kasturi Ranjan says that no, not all. First of all, Western Ghat is much larger, 1.6 lakh square kilometer, 1.64 lakh square kilometers Western Ghat. Of that, only 40% is natural habitat, 41% is natural habitat. So of this 41%, 90% should be declared. Of this 41%, 90% should be declared eco-sensitive zone, and accordingly restrictions should be brought into play. Okay, so I hope eco-sensitive zones and issues associated with this also understand. Now, urban forest scheme or Nagar Van scheme. This is something that is of last year that we had missed in our previously when we were talking about national efforts. Now we'll talk about it. Urban forest scheme or Nagar Van scheme. Nagar Van, Nagar शहर, city, Van jungle, forest, urban. So in urban areas, forest scheme. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has come up with the scheme has announced the scheme on 5th of June. 5th of June को क्या होता है? World Environment Day. On that day, they announced the Nagar Van scheme, where the plan is to create 200 urban forests in next 5 years. In urban areas, the plan is to create these forests. Now, there are some models based on which these forests may be created. For example, there is Vajre Urban Forest in Pune, or there is Gurgaon's Aravali Biodiversity Park. It's located very near to urban areas or within urban area, but it's very green, a lot of trees are there, and these are considered urban forests. Other than this, other than creating these forests, there would also be a renewed focus on participation of locals, participation of people in collaboration with forest department, municipal bodies, NGOs, corporations, and so on. Funds, where would the funds come from? It would come from Campa. We've already talked about Campa fund. We had seen that the fund which is received in Campa, 90% go to the states, 10% remains with National Campa. Of this 90%, the money is used for afforestation and all those purposes. So for this Nagar Van scheme, the fund would be coming from Campa. Now, what will be the significance? Generally, the forests in the cities, the green areas in the city acts as lungs of the cities. We talked about this while talking about zoos or national park in cities. We had seen that Guindy National Park in Chennai acts as the lung of Chennai. In the same way, various national parks in Andhra Pradesh also play a similar role. There's a national park in Bangalore city that also plays that role. So it will be lung of city which will be supplying oxygen to the city and taking out CO2. जैसे हमारा लंग हमारे ब्लड से CO2 लेता है और ब्लड को ऑक्सीजन सप्लाई करता है. In the same way, this role would be played by this thing. Then it will moderate temperature of the cities. We have seen that city, because of concretization, gets into the zone of urban heat island, right? It will protect us from that situation. It will reduce level of ozone, SO2 and particulate matter. We know that plants can play this role. Then fight climate change. If it's extracting CO2 from the atmosphere, it is fighting climate change. And finally, it will provide space for nature and wildlife. These are general advantages. All of us would be able to do that. What is important is for you to know that Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has come up with a new scheme, Urban One scheme, where 200 urban forests in next 5 years would be established. But announcement है, पैसे कैंपा से आने हैं तो कैंपा के अंदर अब जो काम हो रहा होगा, they'll say that देखो अर्बन वन स्कीम के अंदर काम हो रहा है. The way all the bank accounts which are being opened now are considered जनधन accounts to show कि देखो जनधन accounts के अंदर इतने सारे बैंक अकाउंट खुल गए. Something similar may happen. Now, heritage trees, they need to sit. वैसे 4 years back when I had started teaching, I used to take only one class every week of 7 to 8 hours. Saturday को जब मैं पढ़ाता था, and I could teach in the whole class standing. अब बुढ़ापा आ रहा है. After 1.5 hours, I feel like बैठ जाते हैं अब. So heritage trees. What is this concept of heritage trees? Maharashtra में they have made a change to a law. There was a law in Maharashtra, Maharashtra Urban Area Protection and Preservation of Trees Act 1975. There's a 1975 Act, Maharashtra Urban Areas Protection and Preservation of Trees. So urban area के trees का protection and preservation के लिए there's a law. This law has been amended recently. July 2021 में both houses of Maharashtra has an assembly as well as a council. Both houses have passed an amendment to the law under which they have said that trees which are more than 50 years old will be tagged as heritage trees. Trees which are more than 50 years old will be given the heritage tree tag. Idea is these trees needs to be protected more. So conserve old trees in urban areas and tighten the felling of trees. Tighten the rules related to felling of trees. Further, this amendment is also providing for the formation of state tree authority. एक state level पे tree authority होगा, and then tree authorities in local civic bodies and council. So two things have happened. One, trees which are more than 50 years of age will be declared heritage trees. Focus is on their preservation and conservation. And then authorities, state tree authority and tree authorities at local and civic body level are also being created. Now, what is the task? The task of these tree authorities is to increase the tree cover in urban areas. Now, whenever a permission for felling of more than 200 trees have to be given, it has to come from state tree authority. Now, when you are, can we not cut heritage trees now? It will be a very strict thing, because in Maharashtra, in Mumbai, there would be, in the city itself, there would be many trees which are more than 50 years of age. So saying that you cannot cut these trees is not feasible. Cutting these trees have been made more difficult. For example, it is said that if you are cutting a tree, then you should plant as many trees as is the age of the tree. If a tree is 100 years of age, you plant 100 trees and each of these trees should be 6 to 18 feet in height. ऐसा नहीं कि sapling plant करके निकल गए. Should be 6 to 18 feet in height, and Survival of such trees would also be ensured by geotagging. Each of the trees that you're planting, it will be geotagged to ensure that future में देख भी पाए कि those trees have survived. And if it's not possible, if compensatory plantation is not possible, in that case the feller has to pay the economic valuation of the tree. वो जो 50 साल पुराना है 100 साल पुराना ट्री है उसका इकोनॉमिक वैल्यूएशन कैसा होगा. नाउ नो क्लैरिटी ऑन हाउ इकोनॉमिक वैल्यूएशन वुड बी कैलकुलेटेड हैज बीन गिवन, बट एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट्स आर सेइंग दैट मेजर इकोनॉमिक वैल्यूएशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ द अमाउंट ऑफ ऑक्सीजन प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय द ट्री. That will give you the real economic valuation. Others are saying that why only the oxygen being supplied by the tree, like अगले 100, you know that trees never die of old age. Trees don't get old. जैसे हम बुढ़े होके मर जाएंगे ना, वैसे trees don't die of old age. They die because of some disease. So if trees are protected properly, they can survive for 300, 400, 500 years unless some disease affect them. So in that period, the amount of oxygen that it would have supplied, the amount of fruits that it would have supplied, the amount of cooling effect that it would have supplied, experts are saying that use this mechanism of valuation. If you really want economic valuation, because this is the real economic value, you cut a tree instantly. Like sometimes in your garden there's a tree, you'll cut it to increase the number of floors in your house or to build some more part in your house. But you forget that आपने एक और बिल्डिंग अपने घर के पीछे बना ली, उसको रेंट पे दे दिया, but that tree perhaps would have contributed economically more, perhaps not directly to you, but in terms of oxygen that it would supply, in terms of fruits or coolness that it would supply to the whole environment. So anyways, so here it is said that you plant as many trees as is the age of the tree, and if you are not able to do that, you provide the economic valuation of the tree. Further, the amendment is saying that now there should be census of trees every 5 years with the use of new technologies such as GIS and so on. Illegal felling of trees from a would now can get you a fine of up to 1 lakh rupees. Earlier, illegal felling of trees could get you a fine of only 50,000 rupees. Now it could get you a fine of up to 1 lakh rupees. So these are certain things which have been brought in by bringing amendment to the Maharashtra Urban Areas Protection and Preservation of Tree Act 1975. Fine, ये वाली बात समझ में आ गई है. Now, how do we calculate age of a tree? The age of a tree is calculated based on what is known as growth rings. So generally what happens, जो tree का trunk है, you will see its width keeps increasing. So on an average, what it does is it adds one layer or one ring in there. By calculating the number of rings that the tree has every year, because approximately every year it would add one ring. So by calculating, by counting the number of rings that a tree has, you can calculate the age of the tree. So this method is called dendrochronology, a tree ring dating. Now, this process becomes invasive because what happens is, let's say this is my tree. I'm sorry. Let's say this is my tree. इसमें बहुत सारे रिंग होंगे, but you're not cutting the tree to know the age of the tree. How will you know the age of the tree? Generally, a bore is drilled into the tree, and then you take out a sample और उसमें ring count करते हो to know age of the. It's an invasive thing. Sometimes it may lead to the tree getting some disease or disease etc. So if you are cutting a tree, तब तो आप cut करोगे ही, तो you can count the age of the tree, and as many number of trees as per this law, as per this amendment, you will have to add in there. Okay, now conservation reserves and community reserves. We want to speak about conservation reserves and community reserves as well. So when we were speaking about Wildlife Protection Act, we spoke about 5 different kinds of protected areas under Wildlife Protection Act. There was national park, there was wildlife sanctuaries, national park, wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves. Then we have conservation reserves and community reserves. Biosphere reserve नहीं, biosphere reserve तो Man and Biosphere program का initiative है. Under Wildlife Protection Act, we have 5 kinds of protected areas: national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves, and conservation reserves and community reserves. So we have dealt with the other 3: national park, wildlife sanctuaries, and tiger reserves. Now we would be talking about the community reserves. So now we'll be talking about conservation reserves and community reserves. So what are conservation reserves and community reserves? See, conservation reserves and community reserves are something similar to eco-sensitive zones. जैसे हमने eco-sensitive zone बोला था कि they act as buffers, or conservation reserves, community reserves also sometimes act as corridors between 2 different national parks. Now see, if there's one national park, if there's another national park, and the elephants move between these 2 national parks, बीच में आप शहर नहीं बसा दोगे. In between, you cannot degrade the environment, you cannot create infrastructure which may lead to problems. So conservation reserves and community reserves were added in the Wildlife Protection Act by 2003 amendment to act as buffer zones or connectors or migration corridors between established national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and reserved and protected forests. Reserved protected forests are initiatives under Forest Act, Indian Forest Act 1927. We have also covered this thing. Now, so this amendment provided for how which areas can be declared conservation reserve, which areas could be declared community reserves, what are the legal protections available, who would be responsible for its conservation, and so on. So let us look at conservation reserve and community reserve separately. First, conservation reserve. Now, conservation reserve would be set up in an area which is owned by government. Community reserve would be set up in areas which would be owned by private players, but conservation reserves would be set up in areas which are owned by government. It will be managed by Conservation Reserve Management Committee. Who is responsible for declaring an area as conservation reserve? It is state government. After consultation with the local communities, can declare an area to be conservation reserve. For example, the first conservation reserve in India was set up in Tamil Nadu, Tiruppathi-Marathur Conservation Reserve. In 2005, on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2005, इन्होंने conservation reserve establish किया. अब now conservation reserve act as corridors. अब एक elephant की girlfriend दूसरे national park में होगी, तो एक conservation reserve होना चाहिए ना. तो Tiruppathi-Marathur was established as a conservation reserve in 2005. Date याद नहीं रखनी, वो तो मेरे को दिखा 14th Feb. Even I had not noticed 14th Feb so far. So it was the first conservation reserve was established in here. The reserve is 10 kilometers from Kalakkad Mundanthurai. Kalakkad Mundanthurai Tiger Reserve. Sorry. Okay, now community reserve. Community reserve कहाँ पे notify होगा? Places which are privately owned or owned by communities. Conservation reserve were areas which were owned by government. Community reserves, state government may notify any community land or private land as a community reserve, provided that the members of the community or individual concerns are agreeable. अब ऐसा भी नहीं है कि I say that I don't want my land to be converted into community reserve and even then it would be converted. No, I have to be agreeable to offer such areas for protecting fauna and flora as well as their traditional culture and practices. If I'm agreeable to this, then that area could be converted into community reserve. Now, community reserve is managed by Community Reserve Management Committee. See, conservation reserve was managed by Conservation Reserve Management Committee. Community reserve is managed by Community Reserve Management Committee. Now, no change. Once a place is declared as community reserve, its land use pattern will not change unless except in accordance with the resolution passed by management of the committee. So, in by December 2020, we had 214 community reserves in India, covering an area of 1302 kilometer square. Conservation reserves would be much larger in number. Community reserve may we have to get people involved. So we have these many community reserves in. You would see this is the number 214. Highest number of community reserves are in Nagaland. In fact, almost 4% of Nagaland state area is community reserve. There are very few of them in other states. Arunachal has 9, Haryana has 5, Karnataka has 1, Kerala 1, Manipur 1, Meghalaya 71, Nagaland 114, Punjab 3. Tamil Nadu में list में भी नहीं है. What was established in Tamil Nadu? The first in 2005. It was conservation reserve. Here we are talking about community reserves. Okay. Now recently, here see, if you look at the list, you would not even find Maharashtra. Community reserve नहीं है, conservation reserve बहुत है. In Maharashtra, in June 2020, Tillari Conservation Reserve was established. Tillari Conservation Reserve in Maharashtra was established. Where is Tillari located? Tillari na Sindhudurg district mein, which is very near to Karnataka and Goa borders. And in that place, there is a lot of forested area. And जो तिल्लारी कंजर्वेशन रिजर्व है, it basically is part of a corridor through which tigers and elephants and leopards pass, and that's why it was important to protect this area. So it has been declared conservation reserve. This is the 7th conservation reserve of Maharashtra. This 38-kilometer Doda Marg Wildlife Corridor connects Radhanagari Wildlife Sanctuary in Maharashtra and Bhimgad Wildlife Sanctuary in Karnataka. Then there are 2 more conservation and community reserves, but these are old, of August 2019. These were created in August 2019. I'll not cover it here, but you should study it. In preliminary examination, they have tended to ask things which are 2 years old or 3 years old. So this was Gogabeel Community Reserve in Bihar is very important. Gogabeel Community Reserve bhi or Conservation Reserve bhi is very important. Understand certain things about it. ये Oxbow Lake में बनाया गया है, and all those things you should know about. Similarly, in March 2020, there was another community reserve, Swingchung Bagun Village Community Reserve. So there was a bird which we studied in Arunachal Pradesh. Bugul Leo Chichna करके एक bird था, which was critically endangered. वो Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary के पास था. This Village Community Reserve is also in the nearby region. Okay, this is also more than 1 year old, so we are not covering it, but you should read it once, because now you understand what are conservation reserve, what are community reserve. We do not have to get into the details of each one of them, but these are important ones which you should go through once. You should not ignore them. Now come to sacred groves. Now sacred groves, no, I tell you every year that I have copied all this content of sacred groves from this website, ecoheritagecpreec.org. So if you want to look at more details of this topic of sacred groves, you can go to this website, but I would recommend you don't do that. मैंने जब कॉपी कर ही लिया है तो यहीं से पढ़ लो ना, क्यों बहुत सारा एक्सप्लोर करना है. तो बट व्हाट आर सेक्रेड ग्रोव्स? फर्स्ट लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड. सी have you watched this movie Avatar? उसमें there was a big tree under which they worshipped, where any kind of thing, hunting or picking up anything from there was not allowed. In that Avatar movie, that tribe had that as their sacred grove. So sacred grove would be any place or a community which they would consider as sacred, and there things like cutting of trees, plants and all those kind of things may not be allowed. So sacred grove could be for dedicated to local folk deity, for example Ayannar or Amman in South India, or it could be dedicated to tree spirits. अब ट्री स्पिरिट की पूजा करते हुए लोकल डाइटी है, एक पत्थर को डाइटी मान लिया, उसके आसपास के एरिया को आपने सेक्रेड ग्रोव डिक्लेयर कर दिया. नाउ दीज सेक्रेड ग्रोव्स आर प्रोटेक्टेड बाय लोकल कम्युनिटी. Because of their belief system, they protect these things. For example, and this level of protection, because these sacred groves are not a uniform thing. Everyone would have different ways, like someone would respect someone. In Rajasthan there would be different way of protecting a sacred grove. In Haryana there would be different. In Nagaland there would be different. In Tamil Nadu there would be different. So there would be some sacred groves where even the dry foliage and fallen fruits are not allowed to be picked. सूखे पत्ते गिर गए नीचे, फल गिर गया है, even those are not allowed to be disturbed. For example, Garo and Khasi tribes of northeastern India completely prohibit any human interference in the. But there are others from where dead wood or dry leaves may be picked up. For example, Gonds of the central India prohibit cutting of a tree but allow fallen parts to be. Now, if you understand this, you can understand if human interference is prohibited, biodiversity is protected, natural forests are protected. That's why we are studying it under biodiversity, how sacred groves, how traditional belief can contribute to the protection of. Now, sacred groves can be classified into 3 categories. One is traditional sacred grove, where a village deity resides and who could be represented by elementary symbol. He could be a stone, he could be just sunlight which is falling in there, he could be anything. Then there is temple groves. Temple groves would be the groves which would be created around temple. So from there you're not allowed to pick anything and all those things. Then groves around burial or cremation grounds can also be considered sacred. Now, what is the significance? Conservation of biodiversity is one. We can understand that human interference is not allowed, biodiversity is conserved. Recharge of aquifers. You will not be extracting water from there and all those things. Soil conservation. A lot of other things are also there. Evolution of plants. Like, see, if there are a few mango trees there, let's say there's a large sacred groves and there are mango trees there. When humans are not allowed to eat those mangoes, then अभी क्या है, जितने भी mango trees हैं, those are managed by humans. They remove the fruit, they'll throw the seeds in the dustbin and all. Their fruits would fall on the ground, or the seeds would eventually fall on the ground. The better quality seed would actually be able to germinate. The better gene would be able to germinate. So it plays a role in natural selection also, which because of human interference may not be happening in a lot of crops. Then, when we look at distribution of sacred groves in India, it is estimated that there are between 1 lakh to 1,50,000 sacred groves in the country, and Himachal Pradesh has one of the very high numbers of sacred groves. Then Maharashtra may be hai, you'll see Chhattisgarh is another state, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu. These are certain states where we have lots of sacred groves. What are the threats that they are facing? One threat is disappearance of the traditional beliefs. That is संस्कृताइजेशन. वो more and more Hindu Brahmanical tradition में घुस रहे हैं rather than अपना ancient belief follow कर. And when you do this, you become as destructive as the modern men. Then rapid urbanization and developmental intervention also leads to pressure on sacred groves. Invasion by exotic weeds, Lantana camara, Proposis juliflora. यहाँ human interference तो है नहीं, तो these invasive weeds are becoming a major problem. Then increasing livestock and fuel wood collection is happening because of increase in population, which is also creating problems for them. Okay, so in different parts of the country, sacred groves are named differently. For example, in Andhra Pradesh, they are called Pavitra Van. Pavitra Van. So the term Pavitra is pure, Van is forest. So pure forest. Pavitra Van. Arunachal Pradesh, they are called Gumpa forests. These are sacred groves attached to Buddhist monasteries. In Goa, they are called Devrai or Pan. In Jharkhand, Saran. In Kerala, Kavu, Sara Kavu. Maharashtra में देवराई, देवरहती, देवगुडी. मणिपुर में गमखा, मौहक. मेघालय में कीलो, लिंगदो, कीलो, किंतोंग, कीलो, नियाम. पुदुचेरी में कोविलकाडू. राजस्थान ओरांस, केंकरीस. तमिलनाडु स्वामी शोल. उत्तराखंड देवभूमि, बुग्याल. वेस्ट बंगाल में गरम थान, हरिथान, जहेरा, साबित्री थान, संतल बुरी थान. So these are different names which are used. Just there are chances that they may ask you that this is the term, Sarana is a term which is used for, you should know Sarana is a term which is used for sacred graves. Okay, now there are some international efforts. One is marine protected areas. So we already know that some of the national parks that we have are marine national parks, but legally they are in the definition of national parks. Okay, so those are marine protected areas also. Now, the name will tell you marine protected areas would be marine areas which are protected. That is, their fishing may be regulated, mining may not be allowed. Those kind of things may happen. So, see, what is happening is on land area, different countries all over the world are increasing their protected area regime. But in marine areas, most of the marine area lies in international water. There is no control of anyone. The protected area is not increasing. For example, in 2010, world leaders had come together and they had said that by 2020, we will establish 10% of the world's ocean as marine protected area. 10% of the world ocean would be declared marine protected area, so that even we need to preserve biodiversity there also. हम बस national park wildlife sanctuary बना के terrestrial biodiversity protect करेंगे. We have to go for protection of marine biodiversity also, and there marine protected areas are required. So this was the target, कि 10% of the ocean would be covered under marine protected areas, whether it would be by nation or it would be the international marine protected areas. But by 2020, only 7.66% of the ocean across the globe are covered under the definition of marine protected areas, and most of these 7.66% is in the national waters. In more remote areas of high seas or international water, only 1.18% of the marine ecosystems have been gifted sanctuary, that is, have been declared as protected areas. And of this also, the largest portions are in Southern Ocean. Southern Ocean, we have already discussed the two marine protected areas. One is the South Orkney Island in the southern shelf of marine protected area, and one is Ross Sea. Ross Sea, we already know, is the largest protected area, largest marine protected area in the world. We have already talked about CCA-MLR, this convention, in greater detail, so we will not get into the details here. But we wanted 10% protection of the international waters, only 7% has happened, and most of it has happened in the national waters. जैसे हमारे पास गहीरमठ marine protected area है, but that is in the national waters. International waters में नहीं हो पाया है. In remote waters it hasn't happened. There are some MPAs in India. I have listed those also. Marine Gulf of Kutch गुजरात में, भितरकनिका उड़ीसा में, Gulf of Mannar तमिलनाडु में, and then there are lots of them in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We have also mentioned them here. These are some marine protected areas that India has. Okay, there are some other news which may be important for a preliminary examination. One is the Bakswaha forest. So first thing that you should know about Bakswaha forest is where is it located, because it's in news. नियामगिरी न्यूज में रहता था, तो नियामगिरी पे सवाल पूछा जा सकता था. नियामगिरी hills. In the same way, Bakswaha for same reason is in news. It's a place in Chhatarpur district of Madhya Pradesh where Aditya Birla Group का एक company है which is undertaking a 55,000 crore रुपए का mining project. Now, this forest of Bakswaha, you'll find that it is home to tigers, leopards, a number of other mammal species. Further, they're also a rich source of minor forest produce. Minor forest produce like tendu leaves, like mahua. These are important minor forest producers. And thus is very important for locals there. So this project is being opposed. A resistant movement is going on. So down to earth, there were a few articles related to forest of Bakswaha. So for mains, these rights of tribal people and all will cover. For preliminary examination, forest of Bakswaha, Chhatarpur district of यहाँ पे है. This is something that you should know. Now, there's another news. See, under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, there are a number of autonomous institutions. For example, there is Wildlife Institute of India. There are institutions like Indian Council for Forest Research and Education, G.B. Pant National Institute of Himalayan Development, and so on. So there are many such institutions which are there under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change supplies them funds also. So, in a step towards rationalization of the expenses by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Finance Ministry has recommended that Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change should disengage, should separate itself from a number of these institutions. It is also recommended that some of these institutions should be merged. Some of these institutions should be brought a part of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change itself rather than as a separate autonomous institution to which it has to pay money. So it's a step towards rationalization. For example, what's happening is there are some institutions from which the Finance Ministry has recommended that Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change should completely disengage. One is Wildlife Institute of India. Wildlife Institute of India ko crores of rupees is given by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Finance Ministry is saying that disengage from it. Create it as a deemed university and let it run like a university. You do not get involved in it. You do not provide money to it. And the money that you are providing, removing that money right now would be difficult. So in next 3 years, reduce the contribution, your contribution by 25% every year, so that in next 4 years it will develop its own flow of revenue. So convert it into a deemed university, do it, disengage from it in 3 years. In the same way, Indian Institute of Forest Management, convert it in a deemed university, disengage from it in next 3 years. Then there are other institutions: Indian Plywood Industries Research and Training Institute, CPR Environment Education Center, Center for Environmental Education. In 5 institution, autonomous institutions से Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change needs to disengage completely. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change के अंदर ये institutions नहीं आने चाहिए, so that you do not have to provide them money. Then there are some institutions in which merger is being suggested. One is Society of Integrated Coastal Management and National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management. They do similar kind of work. Both are under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Merge them. In the same way, merging Salim Ali Center for Ornithology, rather than keeping it as a separate center, bring it under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change directly, rather than being an autonomous institution. So 5, disengage, then bring it, सलीम अली सेंटर को साथ में बुला लो, इन दोनों को मर्ज कर दो, तो टोटल 7 ऑटोनोमस इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं जो रिड्यूस कर दिए जाएंगे फ्रॉम मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज. 5 डिसएंगेजमेंट, सलीम अली, मर्जर 6, इन दोनों को एक बना दो, तो एक और रिड्यूस हो गया, 7 रिडक्शन. So there are 16 autonomous institutions right now. Ministry of Finance is saying there are 16 institutions which are working under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ministry of Finance is saying reduce it to 9. Some institutions are supposed to have been proposed to continue functioning under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and they would also receive funds from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Those are Indian Council for Forest Research and Education, GB Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment and Sustainable Development. Statutory bodies like CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, National Tiger Conservation Authority, Central Zoo Authority, National Biodiversity Authority would all continue functioning under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay, so from 16, the number of bodies should reduce to 9. This is a step towards rationalization. Okay, किसी कोई आज doubts कोई कुछ नहीं पूछ रहा है, सब चिल है. Now, recently discovered fossils. अब अभी कुछ 1-2 साल पहले क्वेश्चन आया था, डेनिसोवंस किससे एसोसिएटेड है in preliminary examination. It was because of anthropological discoveries which were happening in last 1 or 2 years, and for that, because of that, it was in news. So I should have covered it in science and technology. Anthropology तो syllabus में हम specifically cover नहीं करते, तो I should have covered it in science and technology, but मेरा मन किया कि मैं biodiversity में पढ़ा. Okay, so let's talk about these. Homo longi, dragon man. So Homo sapiens, we are Homo sapiens. We while studying animal kingdom, I had said that we are a species जिसने अपने जीनस के बाकी सारे स्पीसीज को खत्म कर दिया है. Of the Homo genus, we are the only species which are. So who were our closest ancestors? Who were our closest relatives? मतलब जो एकदम हमारे जैसे थे. A different species but हमारे जैसे. A different species in the same genus. So till now we used to think Neanderthals. Neanderthals were like us. मतलब Neanderthals would have evolved from the same parent जिससे Homo sapiens have evolved. But recently, a new species have been discovered. This was announced in June 25. That is Homo longi. This is a newly discovered human species that have been named Homo longi or dragon man, and they say that this lineage should replace Neanderthal as our closest relative. Okay, now this head, Harbin cranium, you can see that image. It was discovered in 1930s in the city which has the same name, Harbin, or Heilongjiang province, the Heilongjiang. But in 1930, it was hidden in the well for 85 years to protect from Japanese army. As in 1930 itself, research on it would have started. So it was hidden for 85 years. Because of Japanese army, it was hidden. Then it was rediscovered, and then we realized that its structure is much more similar to us, Homo sapiens. Thus, this could be our older relative. The skull is at least 1,46,000 years old. So when Homo sapiens were using Paleolithic tools, there were other species of Homo genus which exist. In fact, there was a time when there were many different human exist. Just imagine there were different human species. कितना अच्छा रहता, रोड पे कोई और स्पीसीज भी चल रही होती, right? But even no matter how hot the boy or girl was, you would not have been interested because that's different species. You cannot mate with that boy or girl of the different species. But I was Homo sapiens. Okay, कितना मतलब बोरिंग सा वर्ल्ड बना दिया है हमने. So it could hold a brain comparable in size to that of modern humans, but our eye sockets were larger, the brow ridges were thicker, mouth was wider, teeth were oversized. वो उस टाइम हमारे भी ऐसे होते थे. Then there is another anthropological discovery has been made. Harithalasuchus tapani. Harithalasuchus tapani. What is? It's a carnivorous reptile that is 240 million years old. देखो, Harithalasuchus tapani. So the name Bhari comes from Telugu language, which means huge. Tala means head. So huge head. Suchus is the name for Egyptian crocodile-headed dinosaur. तो उसका crocodile जैसा head दिख रहा है. तो Harithalasuchus tapani is the name that has been given to this reptile, which is 240 million years old and has been found in Gerapalli formation, which is present Telangana. Now it is named after Tapan Roy. Tapani. Harithalasuchus तो हमें समझ में आया. Tapani कहाँ से आया? It has been named after paleontologist Tapan Roy Chaudhary in honor of his contribution to Indian vertebrate paleontology and especially his extensive work in the Gerapalli formation tetrapod. So these were certain updates. This also was in news in June 2021. These were certain updates which we wanted to provide from biodiversity perspective. अब biodiversity पे कोई special booklet नहीं होगा. अब जो भी होगा, जैसे when we'll be covering air pollution, there are some updates in biodiversity which are still there. I'll keep adding it towards the end in there. But till July, till yesterday's newspaper, जिसे वो फूलों का बात कल के newspaper की थी, we have covered more or less every. Okay, so let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start with air pollution से शुरू करें या climate change. तो देखते हैं मेरा मन जो करेगा, climate change पे जाए या कि pollution पे जाए. Most probably we'll go for pollution or we may also go for climate change. But we'll see that tomorrow. ऑर्डर्स डिमांड आ भी गए. संजीव यादव, क्लाइमेट चेंज. भाई मैंने पूछा नहीं, मैंने बोला मैं अपनी मर्जी से पढ़ाऊंगा, है ना. और बोल दो कुछ. चलो, टेक केयर गाइस. I'll see you tomorrow. Are there any doubts? Please send me a chat message if there is any doubt in this topic. I don't see any doubts. I don't see any raised hands. Fine, fine. Factual चीजें थी, ज्यादा डाउट का कुछ था नहीं. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.